Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2014 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group. This is our monthly study group where I take your live calls. I answer the questions that you have sent me throughout the month. I try to get in all of the information you're interested to know, all in a 60-minute block of time. Well, we try. We try to squeeze as much as we can anyway. And every month I seem to be getting more and more and more and more questions. So it becomes increasingly more difficult to try to keep up with everything that is going on. And I'm trying very, very carefully to stay up to date with all of the things that you're throwing at me. If you are watching this live, then you can follow along with what's going on the Professor Messer website. There is a chat at the bottom of the page. It's a chat we have there 24/7. You just have to visit any page on ProfessorMesser.com. And at the bottom is a live Network Plus study group. Hello, chat room. We've got quite a number of people in there already. If you're watching this live on YouTube, because this is streamed on YouTube Live, you'll notice there's no chat room there. So if you'd like to participate and you're watching on the YouTube side, you can certainly follow us and chat with everyone else as well on the Professor Messer website. Come on over at ProfessorMesser.com/live. We'll get you both the live stream and the chat room simultaneously. If you would like to be able to follow along and see when we do these study groups, because we tend to do them once a month, and I try to fit them into my schedule, which sometimes isn't as standardized as I would like it to be. It's not on the same exact Saturday every single month. Sometimes it's not even on Saturday. You can follow along at ProfessorMesser.com/calendar, and hopefully I'll have that calendar updated for next month shortly. Well, there is quite a lot to go through, but for those of you that have joined us for the first time, this is our study group. We want to thank everybody for not only watching the study group, but of course supporting what we do all the time throughout the month. It becomes incredibly important to keep the website going, and you folks have been fantastic at supporting what we're doing. If you'd like to take a copy of our videos home with you, these are the videos that I make absolutely free and available to the world for no cost, no registration, no restrictions. You just log on and watch them live or watch the stream from YouTube. You can also get offline versions of that. So if you'd like to purchase offline versions, you can find information at ProfessorMesser.com/download-network plus. It's a mouthful, but there's also pull down links at the top of the website. If you'd like to follow along with what we do, also, you can follow us on Twitter. And for folks that have said, I really would like to help out with the website and contribute in some way, but I don't have a lot of money, simply subscribe to us on YouTube. The subscription numbers are incredibly important, not just to me, but also to Google. They like to see that we're actually doing some interesting things here, and we're starting to get the interest of the folks over at YouTube. So it's fantastic, the support you've provided, and it's a very simple and an absolutely free way to support what we do here at Professor Messer. Now, we've got quite a lot to go through this month, but I also want to talk about things that we talked about last month, because sometimes I get some repeats. There are both playlists, and I post online at the bottom of the Network Plus list of videos, the video index on the website, the replays. So if you wanted to go back to last month and watch what did we do last month, then absolutely you can see questions like, how does a public IP address and a private IP address work? And what is the comparison of PAT versus NAT? Are they the same thing? Are they different? Let's find out by watching what happened last month. When is it most appropriate to use STP cable when designing and or building a network? Can CompTIA certifications get me into college? And we answered, how's the Network Plus test structured? I'll also tell you that we do have call-in lines. We're starting to have some folks call in right now, so I can take your questions live by looking at the phone numbers that are at the bottom of the page. But before we do that, I wanted to ask a question of you. I've got a few questions that I like to ask and interactively have you participate during the study group. So I'm going to ask one of those right now. Make sure you get your mobile devices handy. And if you have a QR code reader and you've tried to figure out when would I ever use a QR code reader, this might be the instance where you're able to take advantage of a QR code reader, because here is my question to start with. How long you've been studying for your Network Plus certification? It's a question I like to ask at the beginning of the study group each time to get an idea of who's watching, what your experience is. Did you just start studying for this? Is this something that you started studying for quite some time? And we can go through and have you get those questions answered as well. There's There's all kinds of interesting scenarios. People will send me emails and say, I started this, then I had to put it away, changed jobs, I moved to a different city, things happened in the family, and now I'm back studying again. So sometimes we have folks that are just starting with their studies, others that have been doing this for over a year. This sometimes takes a long time when life gets in the way of what you're doing. So I like to see that. If you go to govote.at and go to 72684, then you can vote on your mobile device or simply take a picture with your QR code reader. It should take you right to that page. While we're doing that in the chat room, there have been questions in here about performance-based questions and simulator questions, and I'll try to address some of those later on in the study group and try to give you an idea of what those really look like. Now, if you have now got that QR code reader or watch some of these things come in, some folks are already starting to vote on this. Some people will call these simulator questions, but don't be thrown. The actual name is performance-based questions, which really means these are things that are not multiple choice, fill in the blank, or true-false questions. These are questions that will require you to do something on the screen. It's not necessarily a command line simulator or a router simulator, or has many other exams from other manufacturers will sit you in front of a virtual environment. Microsoft does this, and Cisco does this, and Juniper does this. You sit down at the test and it presents you with an environment that looks exactly like Windows or a Cisco router switch or a Juniper switch or router. And you're able to click and you go through this as if it's an actual device. You may not necessarily get a question like that. Some of them are simply drag and drop. So don't be too thrown about having to type a lot of things. It may be that one of your performance-based questions is at the command line. Others may not be. So it's just one of those things to think about whenever you're planning to take this exam, because it may just be you have to put some things in order. Put in order the speeds of these cables. Or fiber types or network topologies would probably be a more accurate question. Or maybe they give you pictures and you have to match the picture with what the name of the interface or cable type is. Things like that. You know, people sent me some questions this month that said, how can I connect in fiber connections and work with those types of things? It's one of those list of fibers, because there's all kinds of different fiber connectors you have to know for the Network Plus exam. That's a good way to do it. We've got about 32 responses. You can see most of us have been starting this at least in the first 3 months and kind of drop off. And there's the folks more than a year where those are my people, where it takes a long time to get through a certification exam. We will certainly see some of that happening today as well, with some of those other pieces. While we're talking about those things, I did have a caller on. We don't have to go to that caller now, but we are taking those phone calls. The phone lines are open. So you can call in with the phone numbers that you see just under the screen on the professormesser.com/live. You can call in at 347-989-8745. If you're on Skype anywhere in the world, you can Skype for free. No Skype minutes needed at +1 855-235-4742. So quite a few things to go through. We do have a caller from the 559 area code. Are you there, caller? Oh, it's very quiet. It's maybe a Skype caller, somebody who's muted. One thing is, if you're calling via Skype, I'm going to put you back on hold. But one of the things to remember if you're calling in via Skype is Skype has this great function that allows you to test the Skype communication. So you can call a test number and talk into the test number, and it repeats it back to you. So it's a good way to check to see if your Skype is working. There is quite a bit that when you start looking at the certifications that are out there to consider. And a lot of people are sending me messages about the Network Plus certification. Is it expired? Does it expire? When does it expire? I don't want to start studying and then in the middle of this have to do something different. There is a Network Plus certification N10005 is the latest version. And this version was released on December the 1st, 2011. These things tend to be released every 3 years or so. So you can probably think at the end of 2014, you might see CompTIA update the Network Plus. They tend to do it every 3 years. I don't know. I have no specific knowledge of what goes on within CompTIA, but that tends to be the standard way they do things. And there's an overlap period. So once they introduce a new version, there are a number of months, sometimes up to 6 or 9 months, where both exams are available, and you can take either one. So that way you can be taking and studying for your N10005. Even if at the end of the year they decide to change it, you can still take the N10005. You aren't forced to taking a new exam with new content and a new structure. So that part is really good. In this latest version, you'll notice they updated a lot of different topics, a number of topics surrounding networking, specifically virtual networking. There's changes and updates to the OSI model and things that you need to know. There is security that has been added. A lot more has been added to the N10005. And I would probably expect the way the industry is going on the N10006 or whatever the next version is going to be, you will probably see, again, those topics also improved upon and added to, I would expect, with those pieces. So don't worry too much about them coming out with a new version. You will have plenty of time, unless you're one of these people that are over 1 year. Those are my folks. If you're over a year, you may think, oh, I better get on it. I better go ahead and get that particular test taken care of, because I'm not going to have a year. I have 6 months of an overlap, or I'm going to have to start studying for this. One advantage we have, though, with the Network Plus certification is that there is this time frame that we have to take the exam, but we only have to take one. If you have taken the A+ exam, you have to take 2 exams. And when they announce a new version, you have to get both of them done. If you only take one, and you're not able to take the other, you have to start all over again. So that's one of those things that you hate to run into with those pieces. We've got a few other callers that have called in. Why don't we take a couple of calls? We'll go straight to calls, and then we'll pop back to looking at some other topics that came in. I do have the 803 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yes.
Hello. Hi, what's your name?
Sam.
Hi, Sam. How are you? What question do you have for us today?
My question, Professor, is I'm new to this. I did pass my Network Plus.
Okay.
But I'm so new to it, the hands-on is what I'm struggling with.
Now, you passed the Network Plus already?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us.
Just recently.
Oh, good. Good. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
And, when you put a new computer, may even have a different operating system, onto a network, you've got to join the domain and name it correctly. If you could go through those steps, and I'd like to hear it from you because I learned so much from your videos. I don't know why, but I just think it would be great to hear it, how that's done from you.
I think that would be a good topic to go through. Obviously, adding a device to a Windows domain is something that happens all the time in Windows environments. And I go around and see a lot of different organizations all the time, every week. I talk to a lot of different administrators that have to deal with environments where they have 100 computers, they have 1,000 computers, they have 5,000 computers they have to manage. So it's a very common thing that people have to be able to do. The real reason of this, of course, and I think one of the benefits, we were talking about this in the chat room this week, is that Microsoft has done such a very good job at being able to administer workstations. They recognize that we have so many computers throughout these organizations. And when you add someone to a Microsoft Active Directory domain, you now suddenly are able to have an amazing amount of control over that device. You have complete control over that device. You can make that device as locked down or as open as you would like. You can control security aspects. You can add applications to the device. You can track where it goes. There is a huge amount of flexibility you get from that. So one of the things that is very common to do then is the moment an administrator gets a new computer in, they will take that computer and add it, quote unquote, add it to the Active Directory domain. You have to provide it with username information and effectively administrative access, or access that would allow that device to be added to the domain. You can't just bring in your computer from home and click a few buttons and add it to the domain. No administrator wants that to happen. It really has to be a very controlled process, because you don't want devices being part of the domain that really don't belong there, that aren't part of the organization. That particular topic, a bit outside the scope of Network Plus. So you don't have to know about adding devices to the domain for Network Plus. And one of the things you'll notice is on my website, I do have a Windows 7 course. And even the Windows 7 course of configuring Windows 7 desktops doesn't really go into Active Directory. It tends to be more of an Active Directory type of course to go through those pieces. But I think that's a good topic to cover on a future video. I don't even have a video right now that covers that specific topic. As many times as I've done it, and as many times as I've stepped through it, because in my lab here, I have Windows servers and Windows machines. I've just never actually recorded the process. And I think that gets back to whenever I make a video, this is sort of behind the scenes at Messer Studios. Whenever I make a video, I try to make videos that are topics that you couldn't necessarily find easily in other places. So I know that on YouTube, there's a ton of resources about adding devices to a Windows domain. I would probably defer you off to those, although I will tell you, making some more Microsoft videos would be really fun to do. And I will tell you, it's on my list. I go through me and the vice president of the company, which is Mrs. Professor Messer. We will have meetings where we sit down and decide, what do we want to do over the next month, 3 months, 6 months, and a year? And I keep going back to those Microsoft videos. I just don't have any to show you. And in my Network Plus configuration that I have up on my screen today, I don't have an easy way to show it. But maybe we'll do that on the next A+. I'll make a note and make sure that maybe we'll have that up and running so I can easily show, click, now someone's in the domain. It would be a good one to show, I think. And I think it's a really good question.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Sam. And good luck with, first, congratulations on Network Plus. Before I let you go, since you recently took the Network Plus exam, I don't want to give any information about specifics that you had on your test. But if you had to give people a couple of topics that would be important for them to study, just high-level topics, if you need to think about studying this, what couple of things might you give out to everyone who's watching this?
Well, there's definitely knowing your acronyms.
Okay. Yeah. You make that sound so easy.
I think, yeah. It's not as easy as it seems. Your port numbers, those are the common things. The questions were not that hard. If you study the material from the objectives, you'll do okay. The simulations may throw you, but it's probably something you studied. And if you'll just think of it when you're doing the multiple choice test questions, like practice questions, if you'll just think of how a simulation might ask you this same question, that'll help you.
One of the topics that came up last month about the performance-based questions was that they're right there at the beginning of the exam. The instant you start the exam, you're thrown into these questions. And I can appreciate the people who are calling about this, because when I first start an exam like this, my adrenaline is already running. I'm very nervous, and it takes me about 10 minutes to settle in and be able to have my brain comprehend what my eyes are seeing on the screen. One of the suggestions they gave was skip over all of the performance-based questions. Just skip them, because the Network Plus exam is linear. You can hop to any question you'd like and back up to any question you'd like at any time. So they thought, well, just skip over the performance-based. You can always come back to them. And what they found is once they did the multiple choice question, it jogged their memory about Performance Plus. Do you think that's a valid strategy or not? Uh-oh, we lost Sam. He's gone. So somebody else who may have taken the exam, that would be a good thing to know about those pieces. I think that by the way, Sam, thank you so much for the recommendations and the suggestions about those things. He mentioned port numbers. He mentioned acronyms. Those are the things that we run into probably the most with having to deal with these pieces. We do have more calls on the line. The chat room, let me check in with you folks. And they're saying, what? Mrs. Professor Messer makes decisions with this? Yes, we are making this whole thing work by both of us deciding what to do next. You never see her. She's never on camera, but she's just as much able to make all these videos get produced as I am myself. So I could not do this without having my back office staff, which is her. It is one of those things. And port numbers is you folks are mentioning in the chat room, isn't that just rote memorization? Isn't that just the same thing over and over and over again? And it is one of those things where you have to, here's a number, you have to know port 80 is HTTP, that's web type traffic. You have to remember that. And there's no mnemonic, there's no easy way to remember those pieces. It's just one of those things that becomes a bit of a challenge to keep in mind. Let's go to another call. Let's go to the 617 area code. Are you there, 617? Oh, I hear myself. You may want to think about turning down the stream when you are calling in. I'm going to put you back on hold, 617. We'll come back to you in just a bit because I did have the 661 area code. Are you there, caller? Are you there, caller? I think 661. Was that the one we tried before? I'm trying to remember. I'll make a note here in case that caller calls back. I'm going to put that caller back on hold. Okay. Well, there is quite a number of things I want to make all of you aware of on the website. There's so much that we have done in the past month or two or three. One thing that has taken off, you folks have really embraced this, and I can't thank you enough, are our new study guides. Once you have watched the videos, once you have read your books, and you are now ready to hop into the exam, but you need something that might take all of the content that you've been watching in all of those videos and just put it on some quick sheets here. Something you can look at very quickly and be able to memorize, things like acronyms, things like port numbers, the things that Sam just mentioned. It would be nice if all of these things were in one place. And that's what I've done. I've taken all of these bits of information that you're expected to know for your Network Plus exam, and I put them into a PDF. This PDF has everything on it. In fact, I should probably flip over and just let you see a live version of this. So I've got everything about port numbers and what are common routing metrics. We're going to talk about routing in just a bit. Here's a good example of that on the study group. Understanding the DNS resolution process. There it is right from my videos. I've grabbed that information. And of course, I've got port numbers in here somewhere. Where did I put those? A whole table here on all of the port numbers that you need to know for the exam. One nice part about having this available is that it's everything in one place. I've got 11 pages of this information, and it's a way to help support what we're doing on the Professor Messer website. For those of you that have seen this before, extremely useful to have those things there. And I've also priced it in a way that you're able to get and grab that information without spending a lot of money, and every single penny of this goes right directly back into supporting and keeping the website going. So for those of you that have sometimes mentioned, I'd love to contribute to the site, but I don't take donations. It's just one of those things I don't do on the site. It's not the plan for what we're trying to do. I'd like to give you something. If you're going to put your money and your skin in the game, as they say, I'd like to give you something in return. And this is my way of giving you something in return. And hopefully that's something that also might help you for your exams as well. If you want to learn more about those, didn't even give you the link, professormesser.com/netsg for Network Plus Study Guide. Let's have a look at other callers that have come in. I'm going to go back to the 617 area code. I think back. Are you there, 617? Oh, he's still listening. You need, by the way, the stream is coming in when you call in. You will hear me on the call-in line. You can mute the stream if you happen to be doing that. We're going to go right back to 661, which had no audio before. Are you still there? No audio. There's nothing.
Yes.
Oh, wait. Oh, I'll put you on hold. Let me go back. 661. There you are. Hi. What's your name? Oh, did I lose you? Oh, I hear you. I hear the chat 661 that is flipping around there. Are you still there? Maybe not. Oh, I thought I heard you there for a moment. I'm going to go back to this and I'm going to make sure I put notes in there. One of the things that we do here is with these call-in lines, you'll notice there's no one behind me. There's no staff of people in the studio. There's nobody here but me. So I go through and take these calls right from that dial-up line. It's a hot line when I pick it up. I don't know who's there. I have no idea what you're going to say. I don't know what's there. It's one of those things. But I do have questions for you. I talked about routing, and one of the questions you sent me about those pieces are specific to to routing. So I have another question for you, and this particular question is one you need to have ready to answer with your QR code reader. And by the way, do not answer this in the chat room. This is a question for all of you to figure out as we go through these pieces. The question is, what's the next hop? What would be a next hop? No answering in the chat room, remember. And if you go to govote.at to the number 15876, or you simply take a picture of that QR code that is on the screen, you can go to the page where it gives you some options for what is a next hop. Is a next hop a destination port number? Is it a router's forwarding decision? Is it the salt used in an encryption algorithm? Or is it a wireless authentication method? What is it? What are those things? What is a next hop? And I can tell you that I run into situations with next hops that are extremely common when working in a networking environment. That gives you no clue whatsoever to any of those things, but it might give you an idea of things you can think about in being able to do that. So what is a next hop? It's one of those four things. Is it a destination port number? Is it a router's forwarding decision? Is it the salt used in an encryption algorithm? Or is it a wireless authentication method? And I have some folks already responding. We've got 9 respondents. I've got it paused on the screen so you can't see what the other people are voting on. If you are watching the replay, you can still visit this page and see the final results and even vote on it yourself if you'd like to. So in real time, while you're streaming this replay, you can go to that same web page and participate. At that point, you'll actually see what everybody voted on at that point. I'm not going to have it hidden like this because we'll remove it from the screen and be able to see those pieces there as well. Let's also, 36 respondents, you people are coming into this. I mentioned that I see this a lot. It's interesting how we think about networking technology as being remarkably complex, and it is. There's a lot that goes into a network environment and understanding the things that you need to know. But it's so interesting to me that the things, problems we run into, the things we have to troubleshoot, the issues that we find ourselves in are very often fundamental things. And if we just spent more time troubleshooting the fundamentals, we would have probably found that particular problem. This is no different than anything else, if you want to think of it that way. So let's see what you folks have answered here. Let's unhide the results. And 43 of you said that it's a router's forwarding decision. 3 of you said it's destination port number. I think we'll go with the popular vote on this one. It is definitely a router's forwarding decision. Nobody bit on my questions about the salt used in an encryption algorithm or a wireless authentication method. Everybody knows that that is a router's forwarding decision. And I think that's where we start to get into this. The question really came from Alan, who asked, how does a router find the next hop? And I think that's a pretty valid question, since we don't know where traffic goes once it leaves our computer. We simply throw our packets out into the world and somehow they find their way to Google. We have no idea how they got there, nor do we really care that much about how packets get from here to there and back. There used to be a type, well, there still is, a type of routing called source routing, where the idea is your computer determines the best route to take, and it sends the information out over the network, and the devices in between are looking at where you want the traffic to go, and it follows your best path. Now, source routing has its own challenges associated with it. It's very rare to see source routing implemented any longer. Back in the days where everything was really bridged, we were doing a lot of source routing. These days, we don't do much at all. These days, all the routing is done on a router. That's where all of the hard work is done. As the traffic is going through the router determines where the traffic is to go. And so on perhaps your home network you might be on, you throw information into that router probably only has one place it can go. It goes out to the internet. But on the internet are these very large devices that have many different interfaces on them. That packet arrives into those devices, and that device now has to look through a big table to determine, where should this packet go? Do I send it out this interface? Do I send it out that interface? Do I send it out the other? What's interesting about that is routers generally know where the next hop is, where the next link along the way might be, but they often don't know much more than that. There are some things about routing and how they operate where some routers do know everything about the network, but that gets into some complexities that most people don't care their router to have to worry about. Just have the router send it to the next place along the line. It's sort of like you're stopping at every convenience store and asking for directions. You stop at every McDonald's and ask for directions. So how do I get to the next McDonald's? Oh, you go 3 miles that way. Then you get that McDonald's, you're stopping. Does anybody know how to get to Main Street? Oh, you go to the next McDonald's, it's up there until you finally get to Main Street. Very, very common to see that happen. Sometimes you run into problems with this, however. You're troubleshooting a network where you send information out to a remote site and you never see it come back. So the challenge, of course, is your router here knows how to go one direction, and the router out there has to know how to send it back the other direction. So you get into these challenges with that happening. There are also ways to prevent loops, because you could configure the router here to send it to that router. That router would go, no, it needs to go back to you. Well, no, it needs to go to you. You folks can fight over the directions between these two routers, and the packet just bounces back and forth. Well, if there was no way to get rid of the packet, it would bounce back and forth forever. You'd be driving between McDonald's forever trying to determine just how to get to Main Street. So one of the things that is in an IPv4 packet is a little piece of information called a time to live. And although it's called time, what it really means is that every time you go through a router, decrease this number by 1. Oh, now you hop back to me, decrease the number by 1. I'm going to hop back to you, decrease the number by 1. And eventually that number gets to 0. And the router that sees this device come through with a time to live of 0 says, sorry, you must have been looping or something. You took a long path to get here. I'm dropping you on the floor. And that packet disappears forever. You would have to resend to try to get that going. So you run into these scenarios where you're sending traffic out, you're sending traffic back. Sometimes you don't have the correct route, or you've created a route where a loop may occur. Well, how would you know this? How would you be able to understand that that's happening? Well, you configure your routes on the router. And this is where it gets to be very important as a network administrator that you understand the network topology, that you understand this router has these networks connected to it, and I'm going to use either a static routing where I tell the router how to get from point A to point B, or use dynamic routing where you simply tell the router itself, you figure it out, router. You're very smart. Use your magic protocols to determine where the other routers are, and you guys talk amongst each other and figure out the best way to go. There are pluses and minuses, obviously, to both of those scenarios. I probably find a nice mix of this. 50% of people doing simply static routing because you have complete control of where the traffic goes. But dynamic routing gives you some advantages, especially if you lose part of the network over a wide area network. A link gets broken, your network can recognize the link gets broken, and everything gets moved over into the next a better direction. It converges to find a different way to get to that remote location. And on wide area networks, that's awfully common. The problem, of course, is you can put in wrong information into these routes, and that's where you really run into a problem. That's when you run into an issue trying to understand, how do I now get these routes to work properly? Because now I need to understand where the traffic is going. And when you're troubleshooting routing problems, that's what you do. You go to one router, you look at the routing table, you make a determination. If I send this through to this destination, where does it go? It goes out that interface. Okay, let's follow that interface to that router. Now let's look at the next router up the line. And you go from router to router to router to router to try to make that happen. Let me give you an idea of what this looks like when you do this. I have a router that I've got running here on my computer, and I've got a command on my particular router called show routing route. This command will list out all of the routes that are on this. Well, now I have to log back into this device. If I can remember my password, show routing route. So when I do a show routing route, it says first there's a list, a big table that puts up, and I'll zoom in on this so you can see it. And yes, in the chat room, other people are saying, hey, I can go to my Windows command line and type route print. It will show me the routing table of my device. So every device has a different way to view the routing tables. Other manufacturers' routers will have different router commands to view the routing table, but the idea here is that every device has a routing table. Now, it could have created this routing table through a combination of static routes. It could have created this routing table through using dynamic routes. This dynamic routing protocol may have figured out where these happen to go, and then it pulls all of these things together to create a master routing table. So this is what you get when you look at this master routing table. This is a router that's running inside of a firewall. It's actually a virtual router. It's a router that I've built inside of this device that many interfaces are connected to. You have these flags here saying the route is active. It's a loose route. It's a connected route. You're connected to that particular route through a connection, an interface, a physical connection or logical connection on the router. Is this a host IP address, which means is it a local IP address to this device? Is it a static route that has been built? Is it internal? Has this route been created using the RIP dynamic protocol, or RIP2 in this case of this particular router? Has this route been created through OSPF, that dynamic routing protocol? Has it been created via BGP, OSPF inter-area, OSPF X type 1, X type 2? So you can look at the route itself. In fact, I have these routes here. Let me make this screen a little bit better there so it all shows this. So I have a few routes on here. The destinations are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 total routes, and you can see the different destinations. This is a router that has 4 interfaces on it. In fact, these interfaces are named here, interface 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they've been given IP addresses and a subnet mask that shows this is where you go to get to that particular route. So if a packet came into this router and the packet said, I need to go to IP address 10.3.3.11, the first thing the router does is look at the routing table and says, how do I get to 3.3.3.11? Okay, well, my first route, that doesn't fit. 10.1.1.024. That's not even the same subnet. 10.1.1/32 is the actual interface on the router. It's clearly not destined for that. Let's go to 10.2.2.0. Nope, that's not it. I'm going to 10.3.3.11. Oh, wait, here's one, 10.3.3.0/24. That certainly fits into 10.3.3.11. How do I get there from here? Well, I go to 10.3.3.3. And that particular route is going to get me out. In fact, that route itself has the flags AC on it, and it goes out a particular interface 1.4. And those flags AC means that this is a route that is active, and it is something that is directly connected to this router. It seems like a lot of things to have to step through just to see the process that occurs when you do something like that. But it does give you some very clear directions on where things are going. Now, what if we went through this whole list and a route to get to 10.3.3.11 never showed up? The router would have nowhere to send that packet. It would drop it on the floor. It would drop it. It wouldn't go any farther. There's no way to get to that route. And what this router will do generally is the router will send back an ICMP message to the host saying no route to that particular network. So when you're troubleshooting and you see messages pop up on your screen saying no route to that network, you'll know that there was not anything in that routing table. And that will really help with trying to determine how you troubleshoot this. Once you've made that determination that you're going out Ethernet 1.4 to next hop 10.3.3.3, now I need to go to 10.3.3.3. I need to look at its routing table. So the process starts all over again. So it becomes very useful to know that troubleshooting process. Now, for the Network Plus, it's useful to know how to do that. It's useful to know what a next route is. You won't need to type any commands anywhere to view a routing table that I'm aware of, but it's sometimes nice to be able to see that in a Windows environment. So if somebody tries to communicate to an IP address and the IP address isn't in your routing table, you'll recognize and understand what's going on, because this is what's happening on every single router, every single place, every day, every packet that comes in. So you're able to see this in your screen. You're able to see the streaming video because that process is occurring not just on one route, but it's occurring on multiple routes inside of this. For instance, since we're here at the command line and I'm talking a lot, I'm going to run a traceroute command, and I'm just going to go to, since we're on YouTube right now, youtube.com. And the traceroute command is going to step me through a number of different routes to finally get down to YouTube. Some of these routes don't allow the ICMP protocol to be returned to me properly, so you're going to find timeouts on certain of these. That doesn't necessarily mean the link is down. It obviously isn't, because you're able to see this. But sometimes there will be routes in the middle that you're not able to see, and you can step through each single route as it goes through the network to understand how to see these pieces. Really very simple way to do your troubleshooting. Well, I can start at one router and then go to the next router and then go to the next router and go to the next router. So if something stops in the middle, maybe that's the router I should start doing my troubleshooting on. And you'll find when you start working with next hops and trying to become more familiar with troubleshooting, it's going to be a very, very common thing for you to be able to do. So that's one of the things that whenever I start working with these routers and start trying to get these technologies to work properly, it's very common for me to go through. Okay, we have some other folks on the line. I think this is maybe the same 661 area code. We had no audio. Are you there, 661? I'm hearing some background noise now. Are you there, 661? Stumbling around, trying to figure out how to get on the phone. I'm going to put you back on hold. Maybe you can figure out if you're not hearing me, or perhaps if something else, maybe you just stepped away from the phone, wasn't able to get that. Have that piece. There is quite a lot. So in the chat room, people are saying, hey, traceroute, we can do some of that. Why did it only hop 11 times and not 15 or more than that? Well, there were not 15 routes to that. They were only 11. Every time you go somewhere, every time you send information or do a trace route, you're going to probably get something different. If I do a trace route to ebay.com, let's see how many hops. And of course, we had this gap in the middle of 10 hops. And you're probably going to get a different number of hops on your side, because on your side, you've probably got a different route to get to those. I'm hopping through a lot of local routers. I'm going through Georgia. I'm hopping onto probably the middle of the internet, which is probably where it's timing out. And then ultimately, I'm ending up at the spot I need to go to. And obviously, I don't have any control to see what happens on the internal internet connections. That's not going to give me any capabilities to see into that. And generally, it's not uncommon to see links that are just not going to be able to return any information to you, because it's not going to reply with the ICMP messages that it needs. If you want to know how Traceroute is working for your Network Plus certification, there is my Traceroute video that explains the process that's going on here. How does it know where the next router is? That's not something we generally see. If you're running this, obviously in Windows, it's traceRT, and that gives you the same command. I'm running this in OS 10, so it's traceroute. If you're on a Linux device, it's also traceroute, all written out. So you've got some different options there to view those pieces too. Looks like this one is completely timing out, and occasionally you'll run into that too. We're just going to let it run there for a while and see what happens with that piece too, because there's a lot of good information that can be gathered from a trace route. And when you're trying to troubleshoot, or I ran into a situation where I was just trying to explain to my service provider that there was traffic that was being dropped. And so I didn't necessarily run a trace route. What I did was run kind of a trace route command that was a little more detailed. So once you really get into it, this one's called MTR, and I think there's an MTR for both Windows and Linux, Mac OS 10. This trace route is effectively a visual trace route. It's called My Trace Route, and there's all of the routes that I need to get to 8.8.8.8. And look at what it's doing with showing me statistics. So every route it goes through, notice it's sending all of these packets. It's giving me ping times, effectively, ICMP messages on what the last ping was, the average, best, worst, and a standard deviation around those. So if I start losing packets somewhere along the way, I can see that loss percentage and point to a router and say, I'm losing a lot. See, this one's actually losing some, 5.4%. Right on schedule, like I had planned it, we lost some packets, and it was this Comcast router in Marietta, Georgia. So now if this happens all the time, and that's the real key, is because packets get dropped all the time on the internet. That's pretty standard. But if this happens a lot and you're starting to have problems, you can now call the provider and try to get to the next tier of people and say, here's the messages that I'm getting. I've run 1,000 packets through on MTR and captured the screen. Here's the information. And they can start to see, wow, you're losing 5% of all of your packets. You're losing 10%. You're losing 25%. So that idea of doing trace routes can absolutely be taken to the next level, and you're able to get a lot more out of it. It becomes pretty handy to be able to do things like that as well. There's very, very common to troubleshoot in those particular ways. I'm going to go back to that 661 who had the background noise there. Let's see if we can hear that 661 caller. Are you there? Oh, I tried. I tried so hard to get you in there. Sorry, it didn't work out. Let's go then check the chat room real quick. We're coming up on a number of different things that I have written down, some questions you've sent. Very quickly, though, I want to talk to you about some of the things that might help you with performance-based questions. The performance-based questions are a bit of a challenge, and it requires some hands-on. And unfortunately, on a lot of our networks, our lab configurations, our homes where we're doing this, all you have is a laptop. You don't really have routers and switches. There's no devices. There's not multiple operating systems. The best you could do is maybe run a trace route, but maybe you'd like to capture packets. Maybe you'd like a web server. Maybe you'd like to test this all in a true lab environment. Well, my friends at GTS Learning have created exactly that. This is the GTS Learning Live Practice Labs. And I think that the live practice labs become really useful to be able to see what's really happening in an environment that you can't break. You're not going to mess up your local network connection. You don't have to build your own router. You don't have to build your own switches. You can go through all of the requirements of the Network Plus certification without changing anything in your network at all. You will find that this is a completely interactive environment. It's always available. One of the things that I find is that there's a lot of information in here that I can go through, but it's step by step. So if I was, for instance, let me pull up my GTS Learning environment and give you a feel for what this looks like. I've got the GTS Learning Live Labs on my computer, so I can really give you a feel for what this is. Let's flip over. Here we go. So here's my GTS Learning login. I'm going to go to my courses, and I have the Network Plus courses here. And let's start those live labs. It puts you into this environment where you don't have to have any software. It's all ready to go. I'm going to choose the Network Plus for this. Here's all the labs that are here. Configuring DHCP servers and clients, configuring routing, TCP and port scanning. Hey, configuring routing, that's something we just did. I've started it earlier, but I'm going to click on that to give you a feel that on the left side of the screen are all of the devices. So I could start up the server. I could start up this client. I could start up this gateway. They're turning orange here as I start them. There's a router. There's a web server. And get all that running with a database server connected to it. And then I've got a lab that shows exactly how this is set up in their virtual environment. There's a little network diagram. And at the bottom of the screen, you can go through and start going to page one. What should I do first? And it says, well, here you go. On page one, here's your first start. Here's the servers, the clients. Let's look at the routing information. It takes you to the routing details in Windows, gives you an idea of how you can change things on the screen, and takes you step by step with these graphical views of what you should be seeing on the screen and stepping through those pieces. Once these servers are built, you may be asking, how do I get to those devices? Well, once they boot, they simply show up as a remote desktop. I'm running in Chrome, so I'm using HTML5. You can probably do this in Firefox as well. There's no software to load. It just starts up, and now I have a remote desktop session to all of these. And here I've got Wireshark on my screen. I can start up a Wireshark session. Let's make this big, and let's do a capture on this interface, sort of going off the lab here. And we're starting to capture packets that are coming in all in this live lab. A very simple way to step through and be able to really see what's going on with this piece. If you'd like to know more about this, we've got special pricing on this from GTS Learning. For $99, you get a year of this. So even I might be able to fit my time frames in. Go to professormesser.com/netlabs to really see what's going on. And you can get an hour of lab time for free. So you can try it out yourself. You don't have to spend $99 right out of the gate. See if it's for you. See if it fits the type of learning that you would like to do with those live labs. You may find that it's a technology that works well for you to be able to figure out how to learn these hands-on processes that the Network Plus exam is going to expect from you. And you can see all that at professormesser.com/netlabs. And we thank GTS Learning for sponsoring what we're doing here on our live study group. Well, before we go to some of the exam questions that people will ask, I do had 661 call back on another number. We're going to try hard to get you on here. Are you there, caller? I hear nothing.
Hello.
Oh, wait. Just when I think I've heard nothing, I heard you there. Are you there, caller? I think it's now. Oh, I do indeed hear you. Hi, what's your name? Well, maybe not. Yeah, that's not working so well. It sounds like you may have a microphone that's not quite picking up or something there. Can you give it another shot?
Yes. Yeah.
Just not working out, I don't think. It's a little bit of a challenge there. If you do have headphones to put on, that helps as well. That way we don't hear a lot of the background noise that's coming through. Let's try an area code closer to me, 904. Are you there, caller? I hear you there, caller. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Yes, you are there. Hi, what's your name?
Okay, good. Like Brian.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for calling. What question do you have today?
Really, I really have like a question per se. It's just like I was actually like watching along the live cast right now, and I just want to say how much of a benefit that I think these live labs you're going over like right now we're going to be to me when I take my Network Plus test.
It's one of the things when I took my Network Plus test, I tried to think about how am I going to figure out a route, like next hop, if you've never done a next hop before? A lot of the questions that come in this week always are about the OSI model. I don't have OSI model in this particular study group, but it's one of those things I think because you've never done it before, it is a concept that is so unusual. I try to take some of the things that I see during my normal work week and kind of pull them in to get this piece going. Now, for how long you're studying for your Network Plus exam now then, correct?
Yes.
And now how long have you been studying for that?
I actually really only completed my A plus test, say about 2 weeks ago. So really, I'm really kind of just getting into like the studying portion of the Network Plus.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Now, are there certain topics that you've run into? Obviously, Network Plus is a pretty much a departure from A+. There's a little bit, just a tiny little overlap on the network side with port numbers, but there's not much more. OSI isn't really covered in A+. Are there certain topics that you've gone through and you thought, this one is one I've really got to spend some time studying?
Well, so far, I guess the overall topic of how you subnet a network exactly.
Yes.
How you set up subnetting. That's like one thing I was having an issue with right now.
This is one of the things that I go back and forth over subnetting. There are obviously subnetting videos that I have in my Network Plus lists of videos. You can go online and watch the subnetting, and I do it from a very low level. How the actual mechanics of subnetting really work. And it involves converting to binary, doing some zeros and ones, and then converting back to decimal. Obviously, when you're working in networking day to day, you don't go through that big process. There's some shortcuts that you can use. And I intentionally did not create a video about the shortcuts. And a lot of people ask questions also every week on subnetting. OSI and subnetting are the 1 and 2 that I get every month whenever I'm putting these together. And the reason I don't go into a ton of detail about subnetting, I obviously go into what the classful-based subnetting, where that came from. I do talk about doing subnetting to some degree, but the Network Plus exam doesn't go deep into subnetting. They expect you to be able to do some basic subnetting techniques. You might get a question on subnetting. People have come to me and said, I got no subnetting questions on my exam at all. I don't know if they really needed to, that was maybe too much detail on the exam for them to share, but they said, no, I didn't get any. Some people said I got 2. I think many people might get 1. So I don't tend to try to focus efforts on subnetting, primarily because it takes a lot of time and brain power, if you know what I mean, to sit down and figure out the subnetting and do the calculations in the time that it takes most people to capture the nuances of subnetting and dive into it deep. You could have learned an entire other section of Network Plus. So that's why I have those videos there, but I just don't cover it in deep detail. And you also find on my study groups, I will talk about subnetting. I'll talk about the classes. I'll talk about how to recognize those. I'll talk about IPv4 and IPv6. I really don't dive into the subnetting too much. And you should of course understand it and try to learn as much as you can about subnetting, but just don't let it get y'all wrapped around the axle. If you find that it's becoming a real problem, skip that piece. If you miss one question, but you make it up on another question somewhere else, then your time was well spent, I think. It's more of strategy than knowledge. Maybe that's a bad thing for me to say.
Okay, I understand.
Other questions or thoughts?
No. Again, I just want to mention again how much of a good point I thought there was that you mentioned about the live labs, because how you mentioned that a lot of people that are studying for a Network Plus exam might run into troubles with those live application questions, because they don't quite have access to all the routers and networks in terms of things that they're asking you to demonstrate on the exam. So I was really greatly looking forward to exploring the live labs more on my own as I prepare for the exam.
This is what most people that are doing networking certifications, this is how they study for these things. Same thing for application based or even operating system based certifications is in these virtual environments. Whether it's a virtual environment you're building locally, maybe you have a machine with 32 gig of memory and terabytes of hard drive space that you can build these multiple operating systems on, or whether you're borrowing time on other systems. I've done some router and switching certifications that I didn't have any routers or any switches in my environment. I got software that simulated having a router and a switch on the screen. It wasn't really virtualized, but it was sort of virtualized. It wasn't a real device. Okay. And people often say, don't I need a real machine to touch and plug things into? And I really, for these types of exams, I don't think you do. It's, of course, nice to be able to feel a firewall or a router or switch, to physically plug in the interfaces and understand the implementation of it. But for certification, you're really trying to understand the mechanics. And in reality, when you're installing a router or switch, you go into the data center, you install the router, and then for the next 5 years, you never touch that router. You've plugged in all the interfaces. You never see it. You're sitting at your desk. You're in an SSH session. It's effectively the same thing as it could be virtual for all you know. And these days, there's even more virtual firewalls and virtual routers that you can work with. So I think you're on the right track. Best of luck with your Network Plus studies. If you run into questions or problems, I'll of course, you and anyone else who has questions about this, if you go to the top of ProfessorMesser.com, there's a Contact Us link. That Contact Us link goes directly to my phone. And as I'm looking around, I don't even know where my phone is. Here it is. So it will go directly to my phone, and I'll be able to at least see that you sent a question in. I try to answer as many as I can, or at least point you in a direction. So feel free to reach out if you need any assistance at all.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks for calling, Brian.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
There's other questions that have come in that I hit the things I wanted to make sure I got to. I have other things I want to talk about. We're coming up to the top of the hour, but I've got just a few more things I want to fit in. If you are watching this study group for the ability to have continuing education credits, we talked earlier, I think it was Sam that said he passed his Network Plus already. Maybe you don't want to take another higher level exam to renew your Network Plus. Maybe you'd like to collect continuing education units. You can collect a certain number of units by watching this live study group or the replay of this study group, according to the CompTIA requirements. And if you send me an email with the secret word for this particular study group is traceroute. If you send me just an email, all it has in there, if you hit contact us and send it to me and it has the word traceroute inside of it, I'll know that you watched all the way up to this point, and I can send you an email back that certifies, yes, indeed, you must have watched this because you knew the secret word that was traceroute. There is another, before we go to one of the last things I want to talk about today, we're going to go back to 661. We're going to try very hard to talk to this area code today. Are you there, caller? Oh, he's listening to the stream. They are trying hard to get through, but I think it's just not going to work out. We may want to take that offline, send me an email after the study group is over, and we can always talk about those pieces too. One of the questions that came in, and one question I always like to talk about, for those of you that have been on the study group before, these are questions that come up all the time. And I must get 6 or 7 or 8, 9 questions that are sort of like this, that have conceptually this kind of question on it. And the question is, what likely questions, this one came in, that are expected in the exam? But I understand, Samson, exactly what you're saying. And by the way, folks that are in the chat room or that are hanging out throughout the week, I think we recognize that we get people in here from all over the world where English is not their first language. They're doing well just to get their question out. And one nice feature of the chat room, by the way, is it will translate like French to English just dynamically in the chat room. It's quite remarkable. But I get the concept here of what Samson's asking, which is, how would I even know what's covered on this? Some people ask, are there certain topics that I need to know more than other topics? And there are certain things that are more important than others. But unless you know exactly what's going to be on the certification exam, you can't even begin to understand that. I have had people, unfortunately, that have told me, well, I took my exam, and when I took it, I didn't do so well. I failed the exam. And I asked, well, did you use the study objectives, the exam objectives from CompTIA to see what you needed to know before you walked in? And they said, what are you talking about? I have no idea what the study objectives are. Well, you should absolutely go out to the CompTIA website. I'm going to go to here. There is a certification tab. It's hard to see because of my head on the screen. But at the top, there's a certification tab that I'm going to click on, which takes you to effectively certification.comptia.org. That's one that can get you there. This is where all of these things happen to be. And I'm going to go to Get Certified, and it brings down a big list of things. And right down here in the ends, CompTIA Network Plus, I'm going to click on that. And that will take me to a Network Plus page. And right in the middle of the page, it says this is Network Plus certification, view exam objectives. The first thing it has there, if you click that, also said get sample questions, which is another popular request that I get. Here's my name. You can send me a message at james@professormesser.com. And you can put in your country. I'm in the United States, the exam objectives, and I'm going to click Get Exam Objectives. And it's going to bring up for me the old exam objectives, N10004. That's an exam you cannot take any longer. I'm going to click on the one that is N10005. And you can also see there are other languages here. So if you are in another country that uses these other languages, you can absolutely click on that. But I'm not sure why you'd be watching this live stream because you don't understand what I'm saying because I'm talking in English the whole time. Because I'm in Chrome, it pops up the PDF right here, and here is everything you need to know about this exam. You have the breakdown of the different domains and the different percentages that will be covered on the exam, and right after that are all of the things you need to know. Just pages and pages and pages and pages of information for this piece. So you'll be able to see in here, if you need to know, given a scenario, install and configure routers and switches, you need to know about routing tables. Hey, we did that today. You can check that one off of your list. What is NAT? What is PAT? What is VLAN or trunking? What is managed versus unmanaged, specifically around switches? What is interface configurations? What is full duplex and half duplex and port speeds and IP addressing and MAC filtering? What is PoE and what is traffic filtering? You should be able to check these off. Oh, I know what PoE is. So yes, I'm good there. Traffic filtering, I don't know that one so well. Let me go watch the video, read my book, find some resources that talk about that piece so I can check that one off. And you simply use this as a master checklist. It's a great way to step through this entire exam objectives and look at all the details they give you. A lot of details for this piece. There's so much there that you need to know about. That's really extremely useful to have. And if you're working towards your Network Plus certification, you're ready to walk in the door, you better grab these exam objectives before you do. I recommend you grab the exam objectives before you even start studying. Read through them. Understand exactly what's going to be expected of you. You probably aren't going to understand most of it because you haven't started your studies yet, but absolutely go through that list. It's remarkable how much information you're able to get. And if you're trying to find a shortcut to get to that exam objectives page, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com and ProfessorMesser.com/objectives. And if you do that, it will take you right to the CompTIA objectives page, just a shortcut instead of clicking around and trying to find the right page and doing those pieces there. So very, very useful to have that there. So in the chat room, some folks are saying, yep, those are a good place to go. Some folks are asking, when am I making videos for the next Network Plus? Well, that would be whenever they make the next Network Plus. There's not a next Network Plus at the moment. As we discussed earlier, there probably won't be until end of the year. So there's plenty of time. There's no announcements made from CompTIA about any new Network Plus certifications. You got a year before you're starting to see those things happen. So some benefits there. I talked also earlier about continuing education units. Those continuing education units become handy when you are working towards renewing. And some people in the chat room said, but if you take a higher level cert, if you take the Network Plus certification, it renews all your lower level certs. There's a whole conversation we can have about that. So not everyone is going to gather continuing education units and send me emails. Other people are just going to take a higher level exam. That's probably how most people, I think, would do it, is working their way towards those pieces. Well, we've come to the end of an hour of our study group, but I have another question for you. This one, you can go to govote.at, and I've got the question for you, which is, what topic would you like me to cover next time? I've got to govote.at, the number 826-815, and I have a list of those that you'll be able to put in. I read through those. I get your emails every month. I go through and look at questions in the chat room, and I make notes into my Evernote, so they're always there. I've got all of these questions you asked last time about what I should cover next time in the study group. There's a lot that I've gone through. It's 826-815. Will allow you to put the answer in at govote.at or use your QR code reader and snap a picture of that QR code. Should take you right to the question to be able to answer that as well. There is this ongoing set of questions that always tend to come in on the study group. So I highly recommend that if this is something that's a relatively common question, that you look at some of the replays, maybe the last 3 or 4 months. I bet you that some of these common questions are covered. I'm not going to cover the same questions every month, but if you go back a month or 2 or 3 or 4, you'll notice that I eventually hit those. So I try to mix it up a bit so that you're not watching the same thing over and over every month. In the chat room, people are saying, can I take like a third-party certification? Can I go to Cisco or Microsoft or Juniper or Checkpoint or these other companies and renew my Network Plus? The answer is yes. You absolutely can. It's out on CompTIA's website under the renewal section. There are third parties. You do have to pay to participate in the continuing education program with CompTIA, but you can absolutely renew your certification that way. So very, very useful to have that functionality there and be able to do that as well. So the folks that are responding there, thank you for sending me those responses in there. Some of the ones that have come through, I've talked about real world experience. Quality of service was one, a question about. That would be a good one to talk about. Wireshark, I almost did a Wireshark one this month. I think that may be the impetus to do a Wireshark breakdown next month as well. Server configurations, difference between RIP version 2, OSPF, EIGRP. What are those dynamic routing protocols? I talked a little bit about them on this study group, but I didn't go into a lot of detail about them. Java topics for beginners, ADN, SDN, little CIDR subnetting. There's a real opportunity there to be able to take advantage of some of those things. Command line, also another popular request is to do command line networking with those pieces. I think that would be a good one there as well, to be able to go through those pieces. So thanks for adding those as you're watching the replay, as you go through the day. If there's things you would like to to have added to this list, you can add them here, because before I put next month's together, I go right back to this page and pull that data in. Also, again, the contact us link at the top of the Professor Messer website will do that as well. So one of the great ways to follow what we're doing here is to really to track us and all of the social networking things that you will find. If you, of course, can find my Network Plus study guide, another great opportunity to take advantage of some of the notes that I've created for this Network Plus certification, sort of a last-minute cram sheet of what you need to know. You can find that at professormesser.com/netsg. I've got all of these different things that I'm on, the Twitter, the Facebook, the Google+, the YouTube. If you go to professormesser.com/ put it in there, it'll take you there. /YouTube, /Twitter, /Facebook. It will get you onto those pieces. Whatever you use, I try to figure out where you are and try to duplicate my efforts so that you see everything that's there. Again, I want to thank GTS Learning for their special pricing on their live labs. And of course, you can try it free for 1 hour at professormesser.com/netlabs. And of course, thanks to you. I would not be able to put all of these questions together, to be able to figure out all of the different pieces we need to know without the support of what you're doing here. And it really helps whenever I'm putting together the final list of things for the month. I have all of these questions to go through. It makes it so easy. This is now kind of the end of the formal study group that we do. We do an after show every month as well. So if you're on the phone, hang on the phone. We'll be able to get to those questions as well. And for the rest of you, if you've run out of time, you need to get off to the next thing in your day, we thank you for joining us. And of course, we'll see you next month on the Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group.